Beautiful. Okay, so finally my official welcome can begin. Let's do this because you're here for a reason, and that's because you care about children, you care about media, you care about caregivers and parents and teachers, and because from wherever you are in the world, you appreciate the opportunities that media literacy education happens in formal and in informal settings. I was delighted to meet Darija Kuharek in Croatia, and I saw her give this presentation at what was the name of the conference? It was the Catholic
Um,
University of Croatia, right?
yes, it was media and family, something like that. Media, literacy, and family.
A
Eh,
super conference and at least 100 researchers from across Croatia. So if you're from Croatia, will you give us a shout out right now? Wave to us, please. Welcome to our Croatian educators. And we are just so happy that you're here today. The format will go like this. Darija is going to talk for about 30 minutes. She's going to tell us about this case study. Then we will pose three questions for the group, inviting you to make connections to your experience and your place of expertise, your knowledge and your background. Because we have in this room librarians and educators and teachers, and many of us are parents. So we will bring our questions into the room. We will have some lively discussion, and you'll have an opportunity to make a connection with somebody here because the people who are here, look at, there are 16 people in this room. These are your future colleagues. If you don't know these people already, you should, because these people are going to help you because they're interested in the same things that you're interested in. So we'll do that for about 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and make some culminating remarks, really trying to do some deep synthesis. Okay, so give me a thumbs up if you understand the format for this program. It's a lean forward kind of experience. But Daria, we welcome you. We welcome you to the Media Education Lab webinar. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Hobbs. I'm really glad that you gave me this opportunity and invited me to do my presentation. And as you said, my name is Darija Kuharic, and I come from the Faculty of Education at the University of Josip Juraj Strossmayer in Osijek, in Croatia. So, in this presentation, I would like to introduce a case study connected with media literacy in preschool education. More specifically, I will present how the picture book Edbet's Secret Plan emerged from a broader educational project called Little Media Researchers. The aim is not only to show the final product, but it is also to explain the educational process behind it. I will therefore move from the general question of why media literacy matters in early childhood to the project activities themselves, and finally to the pedagogical potential and limitations of the picture book as a media literacy resource. So, why media literacy in preschool? I would like to begin with a basic but important point. Children encounter media from a very early age. Even before formal schooling, they are surrounded by screens, images, stories, advertising, sounds, and different kinds of mediated messages in their everyday environment. Because of this, media literacy should not be understood as something that only becomes relevant later, for example, in adolescence. Of course, older children and young people face more complex digital environments, but the foundations of understanding media begin much earlier. At the same time, critical understanding does not develop spontaneously. Children do not automatically recognize how media attract attention, shape desire, or influence behavior. They need guidance, discussion, and carefully structured experiences that are appropriate to their developmental level. This is where preschool education becomes important. In preschool, media literacy does not mean abstract theory or formal analysis. It means opening space for observation, conversation, imagination, and reflection. It means helping children ask simple but meaningful questions. What am I looking at? Why do I like this? What is this message trying to make me do or want? So, the basic starting point of this presentation is that early childhood education can play a meaningful role in the beginnings of media literacy, especially when media-related experiences are approached in a thoughtful and age-appropriate way. This slide gives an overall structure of the case I'm presenting. The key idea is that the picture book did not appear as an isolated teaching aid created independently from practice. Instead, it emerged gradually from a concrete educational project, from work with children, and from reflection on that work. The process began with the project context itself, continued through preschool workshops on advertising, and then developed further through children's visual responses and family cooperation. From there, the idea of the picture book took shape, especially through the recognition of one child's artistic contribution. What is important here is the movement from educational practice to educational material. The picture book is therefore not only an outcome, but also a trace of a pedagogical process. It reflects interactions between project design, children's participation, visual creativity, and later pedagogical interpretation. This is also why I describe the presentation as moving from project to picture book. The central question is not only how a picture book was made, but how a media literacy resource can emerge from real preschool practice. Edward's secret plan emerged within the Little Media Researchers Project, which created the educational context for introducing media literacy through age-appropriate preschool activities. The project combined workshops, media experiences, and institutional cooperation, making it possible to approach media literacy not as an isolated topic, but as a broader educational process. In other words, the picture book did not begin with a decision to write a story. It began with an organized pedagogical setting in which children were given opportunities to encounter, discuss, and respond to media content. This is important because it shows that media literacy in preschools does not need to depend only on ready-made materials from outside. It can also grow out of local projects, children's actual experiences, and cooperation between educational and media institutions. This slide here summarizes the main activities included in the project. As you can see here, the first image shows us the situation in kindergarten's gym. So children were gathered around a laptop, and you will hear later what kind of material they were presented. So the second phase, we have them here at Radio Osijek, and on your right there is the cover of the final publication based on the project Little Media Researchers. So we can see that the project was not one-dimensional. It did not approach media literacy only through verbal explanation, but through multiple forms of engagement: discussion, observation, creative production, institutional encounter, and documentation. That multimodal structure matters in early childhood education. Young children learn not only by listening, but by doing, drawing, talking, recognizing, comparing, and participating. In that sense, the project created a rich environment in which different forms of experience could support the beginnings of media literacy. Here we have visual highlights of the institutional framework of the project. We can see that, you can see here, as I said earlier, that children were gathered in the gym and they were asked to identify advertisements in Canva presentations. The ads featured sugary foods. That was a kind of level up, leading to discussion about sugar and dental hygiene. And the last one was that children produce their own advertisements. So during that workshop, I put various advertisements on purpose with them being made in different decades. So there was a group of advertisements that they could never see before. So, but they recognized it immediately. They knew what the advertisement was about. So this was a kind of meaningful entry point for guided educational discussion. And another important part of the workshop was that the children produced their own advertisements. That was pedagogically important because it shifts children from the role of receivers to the role of makers. Once children begin to create persuasive messages themselves, even in a simple or playful form, they can start to recognize more clearly how advertisements function. So the workshop combined recognition, discussion, and production. That combination is particularly valuable in early media literacy because it makes the topic concrete, active, and understandable. So you can see here how one of the tasks look like prepared in Canva. Number 2 is the solution. And number 3 are drawings made by children. And this is something I'm very proud of, although it wasn't my idea. Namely, children were given various materials to produce their advertisements. They could draw, they could use paper in colors, various colors, to create whatever they want. They could use stickers, etc., etc. And when I started to look at their drawings, all of a sudden there were two groups. The first group, was a recreation of the scene advertisements. On the other hand, there was another group, their unique advertisements they invented. And despite the fact that this right advertisement, which is white paper with a name of Vanya written on it and something drawn, this is the superb advertisement. Namely, the project was held in April 2024. And this little guy, Vanya, he drew a bottle of spray. And since I asked each and every of them what their advertisements represent, he said, "This is a spray that produces smell to make children go away. And it was actually dedicated to All Fools' Day. So this is really an outstanding example. Then, before I show you this video clip that was taken in HRT Radio Osijek, I would like to say a few words about the people who were our hosts. You can see this man behind the children, and he was our main host. He welcomed children at the radio station, explained everything about the task that the journalists have to do, etc., etc. And he was really a good guy, a good guide, so to say, because he also asked a very important question, and although it might seem very simple, it wasn't for the children. He asked them if they knew what radio was, and they didn't know the answer. So this is very important when we talk about media literacy with preschool children. Namely, at least in my opinion, when we talk about media literacy, people tend to mix the terms social media literacy with media literacy. And it is important that preschool children learn about media literacy. They have to know about various medias. When compared to my question about the gadgets, they knew everything. Every single gadget is known to them. And after this conversation, they were taken to the studio, and here is young journalist who he was on air, and he said to the audience, to the listeners, that there is a group of children, and explained all the situation. And then that was the time. I don't know how much you are acquainted with Eurovision Song Contest. Actually, in this week, there will be the 70th Eurovision contest. It is a contest in which every European nation chooses every year a song that represents its country. And in 2024, there was Baby Lasagna, a young man that called himself like that. And his song is very catchy, and all generations were, so to say, crazy about it, especially the kids. Now, I'm going to show you their reaction to this song. Uh, as you can see, as a part of the project, that the children who visited Radio Osijek had an extraordinary opportunity, and this gave the project an experimental, experiential dimension that went beyond the preschool setting itself. This visit was very important because media literacy was not only about discussing messages, but also about recognizing media as something produced in real places by real people within institutions. For children, such a visit can begin to shift the perception of media from something simply present in everyday life to something made and organized. Of course, at preschool age, we should not expect complex institutional understanding, but even a simple encounter with the radio environment can make media feel more tangible and open up new questions. Who speaks here? Who are program makers? What does it mean to communicate to many people? So this was really an outstanding experience. The second phase was parental cooperation, and this is one really important link in the whole change. On the one hand, only two parents attended the workshop for parents. You can see here the leaflet that I presented in the kindergartens, so children could, the parents could see it. But only two of them attended the workshop. There was me along with two kindergarten teachers and two parents. But when it comes to illustrators' parents, and I'm going to say something more about my little illustrator later, they provided clear and consistent support. So the case shows that both limits and value of parental cooperations were present. The final stage of the project Little Media Researchers was the publication. Earlier I showed you the cover. Sorry, this is the cover of the publication. And here you can see the last page. There is a quote from Maria Montessori. Also, one of the phases that I didn't mention, but you can see here, I prepared certificates for all children that were involved in this process. They were very proud to get this certificate, and they thanked me with a song they like the most. But now my attention will be paid to these four drawings. I would like you to pay special attention to this one. This one contains every single element of their visit. There is a HRT, there is a journalist in the studio. This is probably the girl herself who drew this picture. And this is the building in which Radio Osijek is situated. It is an old building, tall but very narrow. And it has very specific staircases. Long, narrow, again, something that caught children's attention. You can see this here as well. So next to the beginning of the staircases, there was a pile of old radios, CD players, etc. And my little illustrator drew this picture. So you can compare the difference between an average child's drawing and his drawing. when I was talking to his kindergarten teachers, they showed me some other works of his, and I was speechless. And when the journalist during the visit asked children what they would like to be in future, he answered, "I would like to be a painter." So that was like, I'm going to ask his parents to do the drawings for my picture book, sorry. And this is it. So my picture book uh, is the result of this first project I was talking about. So it emerged from the project itself, from all the activities included. And as I said, the illustrations were inspired by the discovery of a boy's artistic talent in the preschool group. At that time, he was 6.5. And you can see the title is Ed-Bed's Secret Plan. It comes actually from two words, bed and advertisement. So Ed-Bed in English, in Croatian, very, very similar. This is a very particular, this is a particularly significant moment in the case study because it shows that the picture book was not simply designed in advance and then applied to the children. Rather, it developed from the interaction with children and from noticing their specific creative potential. In other words, the material grew out of practice. The educational process did not only produce learning outcomes, it also generated the possibility of a new pedagogical resource. That makes the picture book especially interesting because it carries within it traces of the very context in which it emerged. It also demonstrates a wider pedagogical principle. Children's participation can shape not only classroom activity, but even the educational materials that come out of that activity. And here are some samples from the book. I'm not going to comment on Dorian, and this is his name. I'm not going to comment on Dorian's illustrations. Judge for yourselves. This slide offers just a glimpse into the picture book itself. We can see a few fragments from the narrative involving a brother and sister object that attracts children's attention and the situation in which a large poster is eventually removed. We also see the figure of Edbed in a dramatic moment. In early childhood, narrative offers emotional and cognitive access. Children do not need a formal explanation of manipulation in order to begin reflecting on influence, attraction, repetition, or desire. Through characters, action, and consequences, they can begin to see how media messages may shape what people want or how they behave. So the value of the picture book lies partially in this transformation. An abstract media issue becomes a child-appropriate story that can support conversation. The picture book itself is accompanied by a worksheet titled Media Literacy Activity. As slide shows, it has 3 sections: understanding the story, media literacy skills, and creative and reflective tasks. This is a very important addition because it shows that the picture book was not conceived merely as a literary object to be read once. It was designed as a part of a broader pedagogical framework that invites children to respond, discuss, and create. The first section, Understanding the Story, helps children engage with narrative meaning. The second, media literacy skills, connects the story more directly with questions of media influence and recognition. And finally, creative and reflective tasks extends the experience into active expression and personal response. This combination makes the resources more pedagogically useful. It provides not only content but also a structure for educational interaction. This slide is one of the key interpretive points in the presentation. The central claim here is that the picture book opens space for talking with children about advertising and media influence in a way that is appropriate to early childhood education. Its value is therefore not only in the story itself, but in the kind of conversation it may enable. A picture book can provide distance, symbolism, and emotional safety. Children can talk about characters and situations, and through that process, gradually approach broader questions about media messages in their own lives. At the same time, it is very important to be precise and cautious. The slide clearly states that the material's effectiveness still needs systematic evaluation. This means we should not present the case as evidence that the picture book has already been proven effective across multiple settings. Instead, it is more accurate to say that the case identifies pedagogical potential. It shows a promising example, but not a final validation. From an academic perspective, that distinction matters. It keeps the interpretation grounded and avoids overstatement. So this slide brings together both enthusiasm and restraint. The material seems meaningful and promising, but further research and evaluation are still needed. Concluding insight actually gathers the broader insight of the case. The presentation suggests that projects, children's creativity, and family support can together become meaningful media literacy practices in preschool. What I would like to emphasize here is the relation quality of the process. Media literacy did not appear as a separate subject delivered to children from above. It emerged through interactions between project planning and children's responses, between workshop activities and visual expressions, and between educational goals and family support. The case, therefore, offers a concrete example rather than a universal model. Its strength lies in showing one possible way that media literacy can be developed in preschool through practice, creativity, and reflection. For me, this is the main value of this work. It demonstrates that early media literacy can begin in small, local, context-sensitive ways, and that such work can later lead to educational materials with wider relevance. And next steps, it seems that I never stop. The final content slide points toward future development. According to the presentation, next school year, the project will expand to primary schools, especially grades 1 to 4. Student teachers, these are my students, my second year students, will perform a short play based on the topic. Activities will focus on rural areas where media literacy is assumed to be less developed. This is an important continuation because it shows that the project is not ending with the preschool phase. Instead, it is developing into a broader educational initiative that can connect preschool education, teacher education, and early primary schooling. In any case, the main point is that the project is moving forward. It is opening a path for new forms of adaptation, performance, and educational use in other settings. And here is a short video of my students rehearsing.
Hidden behind the poster, Adba, the evil spirit of advertisements.
So this was just the first try, and we will try to rehearse it for the next year. And if you are willing, we can show you. We will film performances and send it to you. So
Wow.
I'm not going to bother you anymore. Thank you very much for your time, for your patience, and I hope that you liked my story.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so we are now going to go into small groups, and soon you will be getting a notification to move into a group. You're just going to start by introducing yourself to whoever's in the room with you. But then here are some discussion questions for you. What observations do you have about this case study? What was noteworthy? What questions does this project raise for you? Then, in your setting, in your context, where you live or work, do young students get enough opportunities to create media? Why or why not? And number third, totally inspired by Daria's idea, do you collaborate with your students in media creation the way that Daria and her young artist collaborated? Why or why not? And how does it work if you do it? And then, of course, I am just intrigued with this field trip experience. What has been your experience in participating in field trips to media organizations? What are best practices for this work? Right? So I'm going to put these questions into the chat, and some member of your team is going to keep everybody talking. Hopefully, everyone will have something to say about one or more of these questions. Give me a thumbs up if you understand what's going to happen. We're going to go into breakout rooms for about 14 minutes or so. Rooms are open. Make a new friend. Have a great conversation. We'll see you back here in about 14 minutes. People are moving into their breakout rooms. That's very good, very good. Please feel free if you need my help to get you into a breakout room, I'm happy to help. Or if you want to talk in this room, that's okay too. Sometimes breakout rooms don't work for everyone. If you want to stay in this room, there are 6 of you who are in this room right now, but I don't know why. It's possible you are just listening, and that's okay too. If that's what you're doing, that's okay too. Unmute, Renee. We were cut off in the middle of some very interesting ideas that were coming forward. I want to apologize to you for that. But let's take a little bit and hear from the three rooms something interesting that came up in your room, in your conversation. Who would like to begin? We'll hear from one person from each group. What was it? What was an interesting thing that came up in your group?
I can start. Something that was interesting that came up in our group that both Neha and I spoke about was one of the big observations we had was how young the learners were. And Neha, jump in if I'm saying something wrong, but she was talking about how a lot of times people think it's too young to start talking about media literacy when the students are so young. But in actuality, that builds on greater media literacy as students get older and older. And then I spoke about how part of the reasons that I think it was okay or good to introduce this media literacy when students were younger is so that they can see that media literacy and media is fun. Because my background is journalism and now teaching, but I see that such a big problem in media literacy is just students not engaging with any material at all. It's not that they're not understanding it, it's that they're not reading it or consuming it, period. So something like this is really cool because it shows that media can be fun and it's approachable and that they can understand it.
What a huge and important contribution. Thank you for sharing. Who's next? Turn on your microphone.
Immediately. Well, the conclusion maybe is that kindergarten is really right time to start, and media literacy teaching is very important. And through that education, we could include the teaching about gender stereotypes, about everything. And we are talking about the importance of parent support and the problems of modern parenthood and inequality between children because of that.
Yeah, that was a big part of that room that was a meaningful part of the discussion. We'll hear from our third room. What was an insight that came up in your room that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I could speak. We also talked about parents and the importance of parents. I think emphasized how great was that there was a creation element into this. And I think we were all just, we all would like to see more of this. And we talked a bit about how maybe frustrated we are with advancing media literacy and education. And yeah, so that's sort of where we left maybe the conversation.
That's partly why we think you are a hero, Daria. You are very courageous, and we are so appreciative of your leadership. As a member of the Faculty of Education, you're helping the next generation develop these skills, but you're modeling how to do it. And that goes a long way because there's no one right way to do this. And your identity as a co-learner, as part of the process of having, like, figuring it out with the kids, that process orientation came through very, very clearly in this presentation, and it was just terrific. So thank you so much. We'll give you a big round of applause here. And then I also, of course, want to take the opportunity to, call your attention to what's coming up at the Media Education Lab. Except, am I sharing the right window? I'm not sure about that. Hold on, let me try that again. Here's the right window, maybe. Please feel free to join us next week. If you did not attend the American Educational Research Association in Los Angeles, by the way, there were more than 30 research topics, researchers sharing media literacy at that conference. But one of the most, eye-popping of them was a session called Disassembling Mis and Disinformation, Reassembling Democracy. And this group of talented researchers has agreed to, like, not really duplicate what they did at the AERA conversation, but almost continue the conversation. They are problematizing the concept of misinformation and disinformation in ways that I am pretty sure you will find fascinating. So hopefully you'll join us for another Media Education Lab experience. Thank you for being part of it today. Best wishes to you, and hope to see you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.